On November 23rd, 2024, in Krasnoyarsk, Russia, an argument between two neighbors is getting heated, with both men hurling verbal punches at each other and neither appearing to be willing to budge. It seems that things are seconds away before this argument turns into something more violent. And while the exchange between the two remains heated, surprisingly, nothing goes past verbal insults and rude hand gestures. With neither man willing to accept defeat and give in to the other, both men storm off, angrily walking back to their respective homes. Yet, for one of these men, Igor Zyka, the feeling of anger was refusing to leave. And as the day crept on, that anger was quickly building into an uncontrollable rage. That's when Igor made an impulse decision that would end up making headlines across the globe. In his rage, Igor looked at his neighbor's farm, and not being able to settle with just sitting back and doing nothing, Igor walked out of his front door and made his way to his neighbor's barn, hell-bent on getting his message across. And since it appeared that his neighbor wasn't home, Igor quickly came up with a plan to attack something that to a farmer is their livelihood. Igor planned to set fire to his neighbor's barn that housed about a dozen large pigs. Knowing that type of setback would heavily impact his neighbor's finances, if not potentially ruin him if the damage was severe enough. But, unbeknownst to Igor at the time, and thinking that nobody was home, he would soon come face to face with someone he didn't expect. His neighbor's daughter, 17-year-old Milena Shevelyova. Almost on impulse, Igor attacked Milena, hitting her with both his fist as well as a large stick that he found nearby. While Milena attempted to fight back, Igor was simply too strong, and on top of that, he had a weapon. Milena was quickly overwhelmed, and soon she was on the ground unconscious. And as Igor stood over the helpless teenager, he realized he could do something far worse to get his revenge. He grabbed Milena's phone and left, leaving Milena to a fate that seems like something straight out of a horror movie. Igor didn't leave her there due to a change of heart or any feelings of remorse. He left her there, unconscious, to be eaten alive by pigs. Igor quickly ran back to his house and destroyed Milena's phone, thinking that it would all simply look like a tragic accident. If you weren't aware, pigs will eat damn near anything, including humans. And they don't just stop at our skin or muscles. They'll also consume bones, and in some instances, even teeth. It's why the old saying, as greedy as a pig, exists. And unfortunately, in Milena's case, they stuck to that old saying. An hour or so after the attack and being unable to reach Milena, her parents called her boyfriend, 18-year-old Vladimir Bedny, to go to the house and make sure that she was okay. And as many of you can probably predict by this point, when Vladimir arrived, he was met with a scene that was something straight from a nightmare. The carnage that had been done to Milena made her nearly unrecognizable. The pigs had seemed to target her legs and face, before Vladimir was able to fight them off, but by then, it was far too late. Police were called to the farm, and after a forensic autopsy, it was determined that her cause of death was blood loss, which was due to her femoral artery being severed from the pigs biting her. While at first, it could have appeared to many that Milena was simply the victim of a freak accident. The autopsy showed, however, concerning wounds, those being the ones that she received at the hands of Igor. When her parents were asked if anyone had any motive to do this to their family, one name quickly popped on their radar: Igor Zyka. When he was questioned by police, Igor quickly confessed to the crime and made no attempt to resist. In the days following his arrest, media outlets quickly began to circulate around this horrific crime. Disgust and anger filled many who read those articles, showing a young and vibrant teenager whose life was cut short in such an evil way. When Igor was questioned about why he did it, he said that he wasn't even aware that Milena was in the barn when he went to set it on fire, and claimed that he attacked her out of fear and simply ran away, and that the pigs getting to her was just an unfortunate accident that followed. Yet to many, they see a very different version of events. They see a man who attacked an innocent young woman and left her completely helpless to suffer a fate so horrible that many who first heard about the story assumed it to be made up. For what we know now, Igor Zyka remains in custody, which I feel I speak for everyone here, is the best place for him to be. To end this story, I want to share something that I found when researching this case that I find to be oddly fitting to the type of person Igor is. It's an old Russian proverb. One day, a poor villager happens upon a magical talking fish that is ready to grant him a single wish. Overjoyed, the villager weighs his options. Maybe I can get a castle, or even better, 1,000 bars of gold. Why not a ship to sail the world? As the villager is about to make his decision, the fish interrupts him to say that there is one important caveat. Whatever the villager gets, his neighbor will receive 2 of the same. And without skipping a beat, the villager says, "In that case, please poke one of my eyes out." We've all been there, being so consumed with not letting the existential dread seep in and so focused on our daily activities that we forget we need to feed ourselves. So you whip out your phone, go to DoorDash, and put on a smile as you pay double for your meal that will not only be served cold, but with the added bonus of something being forgotten with your order. So you sit there and wait, and wait, and wait for your food to be delivered, and then it happens. Who hasn't been there? But thanks to today's sponsor, Factor, all of that nonsense can be avoided. Factor is a meal delivery service that puts nutrition, and more importantly, taste, at the forefront. Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. No more waiting in lines at the grocery store, and no more meal prepping. Factor meals are fresh, never frozen, chef-crafted, and dietitian approved. And with over 35 new meals every week, with options such as keto, vegan, extra protein, and much more, there are options for everyone, regardless of your diet. You will also be saving more than just money with Factor, but arguably just as important, you'll be saving time. Each Factor meal can be ready to eat in 2 minutes, and it's not just full meals that Factor offers. They also have a line of smoothies, juices, snacks, and even breakfast. I can genuinely say that with Factor, I have actually stopped using companies like DoorDash, as it has not only saved me money, but the food was simply better, and I felt better after eating them. I didn't feel sluggish or crappy after, something that was very common with food delivery. So, if you're looking for a meal service that actually works and takes the hassle out of planning your meals, then head on over to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50cadaver to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50cadaver at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. It's December 12th, 1996, in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, and Justin Greavette has just checked his family's mailbox. Inside, apart from the normal manila envelopes containing bills, promotional letters, and Christmas cards, there was one that stood out. A package adorned in wrapping paper with a large bow on top, addressed to his father, Wayne. Thinking nothing of this, Justin takes the mail inside, handing the mail to his mother Diane and the gift to his father. Surprised, Wayne Greavette began unwrapping it, admiring the pretty white and green wrapping paper and lightweight nature of the gift. It was truly anyone's guess as to what was inside. The mystery wouldn't have to wait for long, as within a few seconds, Wayne was holding a flashlight in his hands, along with a letter. Wayne, putting the flashlight down, began reading the letter while Justin picked up the light to check out the seemingly random gift. Clicking it on did nothing. Thinking that it needed batteries, Justin went to twist the top, but it refused to budge. Telling his father that it didn't work, Wayne put down the letter and tried doing the same thing Justin had just tried. He clicked the power button. Smoke and a deafening boom filled the Greavette home. An intense explosion sent Justin and Diane stumbling into the kitchen. Diane attempted to compose herself and try to take in what had just happened. The ringing in her ears was intense, and the shattered windows filled the room with the cold winter wind. Justin, at this time, was also taking in the scene of the living room that mere seconds earlier was completely normal. It was then that both Diane and Justin realized Wayne was still on the couch, and he wasn't moving. The 42-year-old husband and father of two, Wayne Greavette, was dead, the victim of an apparent remote explosive. The sudden loss struck the family to their very core. Both Justin and Diane sustained injuries, but would go on to make full recoveries. But as for the psychological wounds, those would stay, even now, nearly 30 years later. As police, EMS, and fire crews started to lock down the scene, the most obvious and pressing questions were on everyone's mind. Who did this, and why? Wayne Greavette lived with his family in a small hamlet outside of Guelph. Both he and his wife Diane worked in the beverage and packaging industry. Wayne was a gifted machinist and was known in the area as a useful and dependable handyman and hard worker. And if that seems like an odd job title for someone to be the target of a remote explosive, you'd be right. Wayne wasn't known to have a growing line of enemies that were all anxious to see him dead. In the aftermath of that cold December day in 1996, clues and evidence would emerge that would only serve to make this case even more baffling. Both police and the Greavette family would be faced with a mystery that would follow their lives to this very day. One of the first pieces of evidence that police zeroed in on was the letter that accompanied the deadly package. It was typed out on what investigators believe to be a Smith Corona electric typewriter. That letter reads as follows. Mr. Wayne Greavette, Dear Sir, my partners and I are opening a new business sometime early in the new year called Acton Home Products, and would be very interested in having you give us a price on rebuilding some equipment. You did some work for a company I was with a few years ago, and although you won't remember me, Lisa and your delivery man Joe most likely will. We don't plan on doing anything until after the new year, but would be most anxious to proceed at that time. We have no staff or office in place just yet, but you can reach us by mail at our new address below. Thanks for your time, and I'll look forward to hearing from you sometime early in the new year. Sincerely, William J. French, Acton Home Products. RR number 1, Unit number 6, Acton, Ontario. P.S. Didn't realize you had moved. Had some trouble finding you. Have a very Merry Christmas, and may you never have to buy another flashlight. If you're asking yourself how this case remains unsolved when the letter that was sent with the flashlight contained numerous clues, including the identity and address of the potential perpetrator, it's due to the fact that nobody in the area, nor in the Greavette family, knew who William French was. On top of that, the company Acton Home Products didn't exist, and neither did the address that was included in the letter. Yet something that investigators noticed almost immediately after reading the letter was the tone of it. It seemed friendly, as if the writer had known Wayne for years. But the most chilling detail was the entry at the bottom of the letter. Have a very Merry Christmas, and may you never have to buy another flashlight. This alone told investigators and the family that whoever sent that package knew exactly what was going to happen and fully intended on having it take Wayne's life. Yet, there was one thing that was true in that letter. The names of Lisa and Joe. Lisa was Lisa Irvin and Joe was Giuseppe Joe Zodich. Both Joe and Lisa had worked with Wayne at his former job, at a company called Surge, which specialized in maintaining and repairing commercial beverage equipment. Lisa was a secretary for the company while Joe was a delivery driver. That told investigators that whoever sent this letter had to either still work for Surge, or at least did when Wayne worked there. At the time of his death, Wayne hadn't been employed by Surge for well over 3 years, and in fact, he was living on a recently purchased land where both he and Diane were preparing to start their own spring water bottling company. As the newly acquired land had a natural spring on it, and being that this was in 1996, the bottled water craze that still booms to this day was in its infancy, but it was starting to pick up a lot of traction. Wayne and Diane found themselves sitting on a potential gold mine. As investigators kept digging, One piece of evidence that was found was a flyer that was used as packaging material for the flashlight. The flyer was an advertisement for a lumber company nearby, only about 10 miles or 20 kilometers away. This, along with naming Lisa and Joe in the letter, told police that this was obviously someone with a grudge against Wayne, and that they were local. Investigators also learned that the compound used in the explosive was superfrac, an explosive compound used when clearing out mines. The flashlight also contained nails to further increase its deadliness. Whoever sent this package knew that whoever turned it on would be killed, and potentially adding even more victims other than Wayne. Justin could have easily been the victim, as he was the one who turned on the flashlight first. The fact that it didn't go off was simply blind luck. There were also 2 strands of hair found in the package, but they were unable to be tested as the root wasn't attached. And speaking of the package, that in and of itself was a clue to investigators. The box the flashlight came in was a wine box, Domaine d'Or Cabernet, a red wine that was sold locally, but it was ultimately a dead end since whoever sent the package had cut out the barcode, which eliminated any chance of tracking the location to where it was purchased. The troubling thing with this case is that there has never been a suspect, at least no one ever publicly named. Since it is unsolved, police still label it as an ongoing investigation, and obviously are going to have to be very selective on what information they give to the public. That has led many who have heard of this case to form their own theories and dig into whatever they could to find some avenue to pursue. I have come across some theories that claimed Wayne was drug running, that it was a mob hit, or that he was killed due to the potential gold mine that he and Diane could be sitting on with the natural spring nearby. Yet, I don't put much weight on any of these, as they are simply just random theories that have no proof whatsoever. I think that it's a good thing for people to form their own thoughts on cases like this, but I feel it can easily get messy if you have 100 different people all saying potentially something different and just seeing what sticks. From the research that I've made into this case, there aren't many things that truly stand out to give enough credit to one thing or another. At least, not enough for them to be an actual theory. But there are a couple that I feel are valid enough to speak to. One of those is that about a month before Wayne's death in the neighboring town of Acton, 2 men walked into the local post office seeking information on Wayne's new address. While I couldn't find anything on if they ever got that information, considering the package was sent to the correct address, I am leaning to the idea that they were able to obtain it that day. What you're seeing on screen right now is a sketch of those 2 men, but unfortunately, they have never been identified. Another theory is directed at a man named Ed Gallick. He was very close with not only Wayne, but the entire family, even having the nickname Uncle Ed to Wayne's kids, Justin and Danielle. The reason for Ed being a suspect in the eyes of the internet is due to a rather stressful relationship between Ed and Wayne. Ed was Wayne's boss at Surge, and they saw each other nearly every day, and Ed recounted that Wayne could be a difficult person to work with. There were numerous incidents of Wayne treating other employees poorly, so much that it led to some people completely quitting their job. Ed also claimed that Wayne was stealing money from the company, but he only had a hunch that this was happening, as there was never any direct proof of this. And Diane later told reporters that this was something Wayne vehemently denied. This, combined with the rumors that Ed was trying to force Wayne out of the company, resulted in both men having a bitter falling out. With the nature of this case and how Wayne lost his life, in a way it seems like this was something straight out of an episode of Criminal Minds. It truly is shocking that in the 28 years since this happened, that nobody has ever been definitively labeled a suspect. Things like this, a hidden bomb in a flashlight with a cryptic letter, and head-scratching theories that ultimately lead nowhere, don't seemingly come around often. It surprised me even more when I found out how little coverage this case has even gotten. The theories that I've mentioned even have their own issues. For example, the Ed theory, with him saying that Wayne made some people so miserable that they ended up quitting their job. Yeah, it surely gives someone crazy enough motive to do something like making a homemade bomb hidden inside of a flashlight. But that story could have easily been a lie to make Wayne look guilty. And who knows, maybe that was the point to pull attention away from Ed. Perhaps someone was hoping to scare the family away from the land that potentially could have been worth a life-changing amount of money. The two men in the post office could have been genuine and they could have had no ill intention whatsoever. The issue is the sheer lack of anything concrete, making all of this speculation. Sure, the things could have all been true and Wayne could have been a difficult person to work with, but I don't think there's really anything a person could do that warrants meeting a fate the way Wayne did. Just imagine that. Being in your home with your family on a perfectly normal day, and all of a sudden, in a fraction of a second, everything changes. Someone you could have just been speaking with, a family member you've known your entire life, gone. Just like that. The case of Wayne Greavette is equal parts tragic as it is mysterious. And unfortunately, any resolution seems just as distant today as it did on that cold winter day nearly 30 years ago. On the night of February 28, 2021, police are called to a scene that is, on the surface, nothing that would be making the headlines of any newspapers. 19-year-old Brian Cohee had gotten his car stuck and partially submerged in a river. After numerous failed attempts at freeing the vehicle, Brian was forced to call his parents for help. When Brian Sr. and Terry Cohee arrived, they found their son standing at the edge of the water, looking at his 2007 Ford 500 sitting in several feet of water. Realizing that the car wasn't going anywhere, Brian's parents called police to help tow the car.
Yeah, we made him wait till he was almost 18 before he got his driver's license because we didn't want him having any accidents like they do when they're 16 and 17 and
Gotcha.
doing stupid things.
This your son right here?
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, partner, you want to come out and talk to me real quick?
Sure, I
Appreciate
mean,
it, man.
I'm really cold. Is it okay if it's in here? Because
Off his pants because he had submerged.
That's fine. I did not know that. No, please stay in the car. All right. Nobody else in the car?
Nope.
No,
Okay.
it's just us. I'm the father, that's the mother, and this is our son. He just
Sounds
called us 20
good.
minutes ago and said, Dad, I parked at the boat ramp and I messed up. I tried to get out of the car and it slid down.
Well, you're not hurt, right? You're okay?
no, just a
Okay.
little cold is all.
Beside your pride a little bit.
And probably $7,000.
Okay. All right, man. Do you have your ID with you, driver's license by any chance?
I do. Thankfully.
What were you doing down here, bud?
Well, I felt like I needed to get out. Like, And I figured, why not park here and just
relax a little bit?
Relax and think.
Okay.
And I parked on the boat ramp, and I thought it would be easy to get out. But when I tried to...
Where did you park exactly? Were you down the hill a little bit?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Okay.
And then...
When you got back in, go ahead.
When I got back in, I tried to put it in drive, and it didn't go up. So then I tried putting it in low gear, shimmying it a bit. That didn't work.
Were you facing down?
No, I was facing up.
The atmosphere of the scene was surprisingly carefree, as Brian's mom joked with police about how they actually made Brian wait until he was 18 to even get a driver's license, since so many new drivers find themselves in situations like Brian was currently in. The officer in charge of taking a statement actually laughed as young Brian sat in his family's car with no pants on, since his entire outfit was soaking wet. Everything seemed to be in order, so police allowed his parents to drive him home to get warm, because this obviously was just a stupid accident. However, the harmless and silly atmosphere was about to be shattered.
Hey, quick question for you.
Sure.
So the back bumper, I don't know, you can probably see it from here. It's a lot of red on the back of that. Yeah. Dripping down it all a little bit. But underneath the license plate, a little area right there. Okay.
Okay.
A lot of red, which means it looks like blood.
Blood?
Yeah. I don't know if did your son hurt himself on his way out at all?
He might have, he just didn't know it. I don't know.
As they pulled the car out of the water, blood was found dripping into the water from the back bumper. Puzzled by this, officers questioned Brian Sr. and Terry as to if Brian was bleeding. And after being told that he wasn't, the officers recommended that they check him anyway just in case he may have been injured and not even have noticed due to adrenaline. However, Brian seemed equally confused, as there were no cuts or injuries to note. Brian's parents agreed that officers should search the trunk, but after several failed attempts, they were unable to open it. Not thinking the issue warranted an intensive search, the police released the vehicle to the family, and everyone left. Brian Sr. spent the next couple of days cleaning the inside of the vehicle and trying to get it to work again. As he was cleaning out the car, he opened the glove box and to his surprise, he found a very large knife. But that wouldn't be the only thing out of place that he'd find. As he moved around the car, Brian Sr. opened the passenger door and something fell out and hit his foot. When he picked it up, he quickly noticed that it was a wallet. Knowing that it wasn't his nor Brian's, he checked through the contents to see who it could belong to, where he quickly found a social security card belonging to a man named Warren Barnes. Finding no actual ID or driver's license, Brian Sr. decided to call the number from a business card that was found in the wallet. The business card happened to be where Warren worked, and the person on the other line confirmed that Warren was their employee, but he hadn't been to work. Unbeknownst to anyone at the time, but 69-year-old Warren Barnes was a missing person. When Brian Sr. confronts his son about this, Brian tells his dad that he simply found the wallet the night of the accident near the boat ramp and simply forgot about it. He appeared sincere, stating that he didn't know Warren, leaving his father little choice but to believe him. He walked away from the car to let it dry and shake a very uneasy feeling. But almost immediately after, his wife called. She was at their home from where she ran a childcare facility. She had called the children's parents to pick them up early, stating that it was a family emergency. Afterwards, she called her husband to come home as quickly as he could. As Brian Sr. stood outside, stalling his son, who had also just arrived home, Terry called 911. It was March 1st, 2021, at approximately 1:48 p.m.
111 is John. What's the address emergency?
Hi, there is an emergency. I found something in my son's closet wrapped in a plastic bag.
Okay, what was it?
I think it's a human head.
It's a what?
I think it's a human head.
Why do you think it's that?
Because it looks like it's all an ear.
Is it bloody or does it like anything like that?
I just told you to come. That's why I had to take a picture and send it to you. Can you
What's the
just
address?
come?
Is your son there now?
He just pulled up. We wanted to make sure he was here before we called.
How old is he?
19. He's had a little bit of a fascination with the morbid, but he was channeling it, I thought, into becoming a crime scene investigator, but not so much.
Do you think he's going to be cooperative with us?
I don't know. I don't think he'll be violent. Just came back from his friend's house.
Does he have any weapons in his room or do you guys have any in the house?
I don't know. I think that he has a shotgun, but we can certainly remove it immediately before he gets in his room. He's out by the car now, so.
Is the bag still in the closet?
No, it's in my kitchen sink, and there's a secondary bag that I have not opened.
She had found bags inside of her son's closet with maggots crawling out. And after opening one of the bags, she saw a disfigured human head. She carried the bags to the sink and pleaded for dispatch to hurry. After officers arrived, Brian was approached and the officer stated his parents had some concerns about some stuff that they found in his room. Brian looked away and said,
Yeah, I believe so.
And what would it be?
The officer questioned what that could be about, and Brian said coldly,
A human head and hands.
Like, for real human head and hands?
Yes.
From?
That fellow who went missing recently.
Which fellow was that?
Warren Brown.
Warren Brown? When did he go missing?
The night of the 27th.
The night of the 27th? Okay, and how did you end up with him?
I murdered him.
With what?
A knife.
Why would you have done that?
I've always wondered what murder felt like.
Okay, where did you do that at?
Underneath the bridge.
Which bridge?
The one past...
He explained that he didn't actually know Warren and just happened to discover him as he was sleeping under a bridge. Brian stated that after the killing, he tried disposing of his body on the river, but his car went into the water, getting stuck. As his mother wailed uncontrollably, another officer went inside of the house with Brian Sr. to confirm the remains.
Let me do it. You go inside.
Well, let's stay out here with me for a minute.
Sit down. Come on, sit down, dude.
Can I go in there and verify here
Oh,
first?
yeah, please.
Let me
We
go
haven't
do that.
seen it. Yeah, we
Okay.
haven't looked at it.
It's under the towel in the sink.
Okay.
And yeah, Stay with your mother. Give her
Hey, just make sure that guy goes in the car first.
I can stay here. You can go in the sink, right?
Well, yeah,
Sink
okay.
right there. No,
Yeah.
The deputy drives Brian to the station and his parents follow closely behind. As they drive, Brian actually points out that they had just passed the crime scene.
It was under this bridge.
It was under this bridge?
Yeah.
Okay.
The deputy relays this information to the other officers and tells them to go investigate the area. There, they find the butchered parts of Warren's body. After arriving to the police station, everyone gets separated into different rooms. One for Mom, another for Dad, and the final room for Brian. Brian's mother states that he was diagnosed with both ADHD and depression, for which he was medicated for, and that he is also diagnosed with high-functioning autism. Terry also explains that her son had gotten suspended from school a few times, one of those times being due to, quote, unacceptable behavior towards a girl that he knew, by triggering her PTSD by making loud noises next to her or scaring her intentionally. Another was because he was carrying nunchucks in school given to him by a friend on the school bus. Brian had a twisted sense of humor, but wasn't said to be violent. He was very keen on true crime content, going as far as looking up crime scene photos, which I can say from experience with researching cases is never an enjoyable activity. His mom even gave him a book about the subject in hopes he'd channel his interest into something positive for the world. His father explained that Brian would sometimes get really cold towards them, but did not display any behavior that would make him think that he'd do something like this. At the end of the interview, his father even stated how a crime like this would impact their lives forever.
You were released, right now we can't do anything.
Well,
we can't go anywhere, I'm not working anymore, she can't have any more kids anymore. Everything's over. It's all done now. It's over. Our lives are totally over.
Brian's interrogation didn't contain any small talk. As soon as it started, Brian relayed the information that he was there because he had killed someone. According to Brian, on the night of the murder, just after 11 p.m., he was in a very bad state of mind, and under the full moon, he saw Warren sleeping on the ground. Brian stopped his car and put on 3 layers of gloves, and then repeatedly stabbed Warren with a knife.
Is it okay if I do a demonstration?
Oh, yeah.
This is him. I was strapped on top of him like this.
Okay.
And he couldn't fight back. It was actually surprisingly easy.
Proceeding to kneel on the ground, showing officers exactly how the stabbing happened. According to his account, Warren panicked and screamed, "What are you doing? Why? Why?" before succumbing to his injuries. Brian describes how he himself was growling and making animalistic noises during the attack. "I was just doing everything I thought of at the moment. I even gave him a Glasgow smile." Brian also stated that he told Warren he was killing him because he'd been wanting to do this for a long time. Brian also told detectives, "I decapitated him partially, just for the hell of it." He explains bizarrely that after killing Warren, he couldn't stop saying, "Stinky, dirty, dirty, stinky, stinky," which weirdly ties back to Brian's own Reddit account, u/that_stinky_boy. He states that he wasn't concerned about getting caught at the crime scene since it was late at night, and joked that he was even wearing a COVID mask because of social distancing. Afterwards, he severed the head, which he put inside of an old pizza box, cut off his hands and placed them in plastic bags, and tossed the arms around the crime scene. He said Warren was very thin, and that when he cut him open, he sat there for a while and simply observed his organs. He thought about going home and sleeping. However, he had cut his glove, which made him concerned about investigators finding a possible partial fingerprint, and soon realized that there was way too much evidence. So he tried to get rid of Warren's body, and that's when he accidentally drove his car into the water. Laughing while saying all of this, Brian recounted that he thought he was going to drown during the incident.
I put it in the water, and because I don't want fingerprints on a body, so I just tried moving it with my shoes. That worked successfully. He goes out some part in the river and floats off. Okay. God knows where he is now.
He informed law enforcement that he had stopped taking his medication, and his obsession with serial killers like Ted Bundy or the Zodiac Killer was only growing more and more by the day. Brian also stated that he knew he'd eventually be in a police building, either as a criminal or a cop. But the killing didn't have the intended outcome for Brian, who said that he felt sort of neutral about the whole thing after the fact. "I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't hate it. If I could go back to that night, I probably wouldn't have done it. Knowing what it felt like, knowing how this will turn out, I wouldn't have done it." I thought it would be the best feeling in the world, though. The night he killed Warren, he highlighted the occasion by typing "first" in his cell phone notes along with the date. He also confessed to taking pictures of Warren's body before deleting them. The pictures were later recovered from his phone by the authorities, though. He also revealed that on Halloween night in 2018, he trapped a cat that had been going into their house with a sleeping bag. What followed this are things I simply cannot say on YouTube, but you can use your imagination as to the fate that cat suffered. What I can tell you is that when everything was done, he kept its body in a shoebox for several days until deciding to dispose of it. He followed this admission by an incredibly disturbing statement. "Last year, my parents found a kit I had been assembling. It had hammers, shovels, knives, large zip ties, duct tape, and a saw. These were meant for hurting people. They found it though, and they were ready to call the police until I had convinced them that it was for other things." He said he told his parents some of his ideas, but he disguised them as jokes. One of these jokes was, "Wouldn't it be funny if you sold a lipstick with mercury on it to those beauty pageant queens and they got poisoned because of their pride?" He clarifies he murdered for pure curiosity, not for sexual gratification, and that he chose Warren because he knew police didn't care about high-risk individuals like homeless people. There's a term that has been floating around for years to describe these victims as less dead, so he was deliberately looking for someone who lived that type of life. Someone who could go missing for an entire year and no one would notice that they were gone. He'd drive around looking for someone who fit this description, but also at a location where the surroundings were ideal, so he wouldn't be interrupted or caught. But Brian had chosen the wrong person. People cared deeply about Warren Barnes, and his disappearance was quickly noticed. Warren Barnes was born on May 19, 1951, to John and Elva Barnes, and grew up in a family of 9 other siblings. He told his friends that he worked as a cowboy in the Book Cliff Mountains and even claimed to have a daughter and a granddaughter. He was homeless, but was known to occasionally rent rooms. Friends and family noted that he was never known to beg or to hassle people. He was a kind person, someone who shared his daily Subway sandwiches with the birds that would gather around his scuffed boots. He was friends with the staff at the People Ready agency, where he often picked up temporary jobs. He spent his days sitting on benches along Main Street and picking up whatever job came his way, even occasionally helping shopkeepers carry boxes around. And then, the city removed those benches. So, a local shop owner named Monique Lenotti put out a chair for him where he would sit and read. Monique said Warren always refused any kind of handout. Money and food were of no interest to him, only friendship. Monique was one of his good friends. She would even sneak cookies into his bag when he would decline a free meal. Warren was known for his gentle demeanor and preferred to keep to himself. This wasn't the type of person that could easily be forgotten, something that Brian was banking on. Brian's trial began on January 17, 2023. He was charged with first-degree murder, tampering with a deceased human body, and tampering with evidence. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. In Colorado, in order to be found not guilty by reason of insanity, a person must be incapable of distinguishing right from wrong at the time a crime is committed because of a mental disease or defect. His defense attorneys claimed that he killed Warren due to these effects of his diagnosed mental health conditions, those being a major depressive disorder autism and ADHD, combined with environmental stressors that drove him to insanity. The prosecution, however, argued that Brian had previously admitted to planning a murder, specifically targeting a homeless person months before the crime. They also pointed out his attempt to dispose of Warren's body as evidence that he was aware of the consequences of his actions. During the trial, the defense presented a family doctor and therapist who provided insight into Brian's troubled past. Dr. Craig Gustafson began treating Brian as a family doctor at age 15 and diagnosed him with depression in 2018. In 2020, when Brian reported frequent headaches, Dr. Gustafson ordered a CT scan to rule out any tumors or clots, but the results were normal. He testified that, apart from 2018, Brian did not report experiencing any suicidal thoughts. Just days before the killing, Brian had an appointment with Dr. Gustafson for treatment of an infected abscess under his arm. The doctor stated that Brian was definitely not psychotic at the time that he sought help for this abscess. As the trial continued, Dr. B. Phillips testified that she took on a counseling role towards Brian from 2017 to 2019, and that he had trouble understanding his emotions. His mother initially sought Dr. Phillips's help for her son in 2017, following the death of his uncle. But Brian expressed feeling exhausted from pretending to be sad about it, and was honestly indifferent about his uncle's death. Throughout their 24 sessions, Brian also made remarks such as referring to trans individuals as it. During one of these sessions, when talking about Darwinism with Dr. Phillips, Brian asked, "Why is it such a big deal to hurt or steal from others? It's what we're supposed to do." Going back to something that I mentioned earlier, where Brian intentionally bullied a young girl in order to trigger her PTSD, Dr. Phillips said that he knew right from wrong at that time. Dr. Phillips also said in the latter half of that time period that Brian revealed an intense fascination with death. The trial also saw another doctor take the stand. Dr. Katrina Katine, a clinical psychologist, testified that she diagnosed Brian with the lowest level of autism, level 1, needing the least amount of support or assistance. Dr. Katine testified that she did not observe any signs of delusions, hallucinations, or homicidal or suicidal impulses. She, however, noted that he exhibited a high tendency for risky behavior. Their sessions ended after Brian expressed that his life goal was to gain notoriety, regardless of the reason. And he admitted to idolizing figures such as Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Ted Bundy, Eric Harris, and Dylan Klebold. On February 3, 2023, a jury found Brian guilty on all 3 charges. More than 30 friends and relatives of Warren showed up for the sentencing. Geraldine Shipp, one of Warren's 8 siblings, said that she still has nightmares about the way her brother was brutally murdered, a day after he had called her to wish her a happy birthday. He was a man of honor, a man of integrity, a man loved by the community and family. He would help anyone who needed anything, including you, Brian. Later, the judge sentenced Brian to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder, plus another 13 and a half years for the evidence tampering charges. As of 2025, Brian Cohee Jr. is incarcerated at the Buena Vista Correctional Facility in Colorado Springs, where he is likely to spend the rest of his life. I think it goes without saying that the acts Brian Cohee committed, not only to Warren but to seemingly everyone in his life, have led him to being in realistically the best place for him. Brian seemingly hit every single red flag for someone who is on the road to becoming a serial killer. I obviously cannot say for certain that Brian, if he was never caught for Warren's death, would never have done anything like that again, but I am inclined to agree that there is a high probability that he would have. With the animal abuse, the way that he would intentionally upset or hurt people, how he had little to no empathy for human life, and how he had been plotting to hurt someone for some time, all of these factors made Brian a ticking time bomb. Warren Barnes met with a fate that is as horrific as it is tragic. This was a man who lived a life that most people would fear to experience for a single night. Yet to Warren, it was his normal. He never let his situations dictate his actions or his character in any negative way. I think people forget that homeless people are humans too. People who got dealt a shitty hand in life, or people who found themselves in a hole that they couldn't crawl out of. These types of things happen every single day, and it doesn't immediately mark these people as any less important than a CEO or a billionaire. Warren was an easy target for Brian, someone that he thought nobody would miss or even care about. And now, almost as if it's a twisted form of irony, now nobody seems to care about you, Brian. It was January 26, 2011, and the northeastern United States was in the thick of a massive blizzard. Some accounts were reporting 3 to 4 inches an hour. New Jersey alone got over 20 inches of snow. New York had to shut down its airports. And in Washington, D.C., the same storm created a 14-hour traffic jam. And in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Ellen Greenberg would soon meet with a fate that still to this day has people struggling to understand how law enforcement reached the conclusion that was given. Ellen Ray Greenberg was a 27-year-old first-grade teacher at Juanita Park Academy in the Juanita neighborhood of Philadelphia. She'd been born in New York City and had attended both Penn State and Temple University. Ellen had originally planned to become a speech pathologist before switching her career ambitions to teaching. Ellen was also engaged to be married in August to her fiancé, Sam Goldberg. They'd been together for about 3 years when he proposed to her on a beach in California. The couple lived together in an apartment on the 6th floor of the Venislavs building, overlooking the Schuylkill River in Philadelphia. Before I continue, I wanted to let everyone know that I am going to be presenting this case in a slightly different format than my normal videos, due to the high-profile attention that this case got. So many things happened that a thorough timeline is needed to paint the picture with the best clarity. On January 26, 2011, Philadelphia's public schools closed early due to the weather. Ellen left Juanita Park Academy at around 1:15 p.m. She stopped at a gas station near her apartment to fill up her car's tank so that her fuel lines wouldn't freeze and burst during the blizzard. Ellen arrived home at around 2:20 p.m. At 2:31 p.m., she made a call to a local restaurant and then entered her students' grades remotely into the school system. Ellen made another call at 2:33 p.m. and then sent a text message at 3:47 p.m. At 4:45 p.m., security cameras captured Ellen's fiancé Sam leaving the apartment and entering the gym in their building. And about a minute later, Ellen's laptop logged her using it at 4:46 p.m. Sam left the gym at around 5:30 p.m. and headed back to the apartment. And that's when he discovered that he couldn't get in. Although Sam had his keys with him, the apartment also had a swing bar lock on the inside of the front door, similar to the ones found in many hotel rooms. When the swing lock was closed, the door couldn't be opened from the outside, regardless if you had a key or not. Sam used his keys on the door as usual, and it refused to open. Sam pounded on the door trying to get Ellen's attention, and yet nothing happened. Sam tried calling Ellen's phone, and yet no response. Then Sam tried texting Ellen. "Hello? Open the door. What are you doing? I'm getting pissed. Hello? You better have an excuse. What the fuck? You have no idea." At 5:44 p.m., neighbors heard Sam shouting Ellen's name through the door. He ended up calling Cohee Schwartzman, a lawyer that he knew, and told him that Ellen wasn't responding. Schwartzman suggested that he contact building security and ask them to open the door. About 15 minutes later at 6 o'clock, Sam went down to the lobby to ask the doorman, Phil Hanton, to break down the door. Hanton told him that it was against company policy to break down doors, but he would call Ellen for Sam to see what was going on. 7 minutes later, Ellen's phone received 2 calls from the Venice lofts, yet no one answered. Hanton offered to call the police, but Sam held off. And it was at this time that Sam also received a call from his uncle, who urged him to call 911. At 6:30 p.m., Cohee Schwartzman and his brother, James, who was also a lawyer, advised Sam to kick in the door himself. Sam began kicking the door in while still on the phone, and that's when the brothers heard screaming. Ellen was unresponsive just inside the door. She was wearing light brown Ugg boots, gray sweatpants, and a dark gray zip-up hoodie with a dark gray t-shirt underneath. There was blood everywhere, including on the floor and on the lower kitchen cabinets. And worst of all, Ellen wasn't reacting to Sam's screams.
Help! I need a emergency now. I just walked to my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere.
What is the address?
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please come help now.
4601
Flat Rock Road.
Is this a house or apartment?
Oh no! Oh no! It's an apartment. Please hurry, please.
Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. I can't tell.
No, sir, you have to calm yourself down in order to get you some help.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I can't see anything. There's nothing broken. She's bleeding. Ellie!
You don't know where she's bleeding from? Can't tell where the blood's coming from?
I think her head. I think she hit her head, I think. But it's everywhere.
Okay, sir,
it's everywhere.
You think she might have fallen? Do you know what happened?
She may have slipped. There's blood on the table. Her face is a little purple.
Okay, hold on for rescue for her. Stay on the phone. What's wrong?
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with blood. She's not responding.
Okay, is she breathing? Look at her chest. I need you to calm down, and I need you to look at her chest. It's really.
I really don't think she is.
Listen to me. Someone's on the way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back?
She's on her back. Do I bring her?
Look at her chest and tell me if it's going up and down, up and down.
I don't see her moving.
Okay. Do you know how to do CPR?
I don't.
Okay, I can tell you what to do, okay, until they get there. I want you to keep her fed
Oh,
on her...
God.
Hello?
Yeah, hi, okay.
Are you willing to do CPR with me over the phone until they get there?
I have to, right?
Okay, so get her flat on her back, bare her chest, okay? You want to rip her shirt, kneel down by her side.
Oh, my God. Ellie, please.
Listen, you can't freak out, sir, because you
Okay, I'm trying not. Her shirt won't come off. It's a zipper. Oh, my God. She stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell with a knife. Oh, no, her knife's sticking out.
Her what?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
Oh, she stabbed herself?
I guess so. I don't know where she fell on it. I don't know.
Okay, well, don't touch it.
Okay, so I just let her down here now? I mean, what do I do?
No, I mean, you can't. If the knife is in her chest, it's going to be kind of hard for you to do CPR at this time.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Police wish operator. 277.
Is someone coming here?
Yes, they are.
At 6:33 p.m., Sam called 911. He said he found Ellen lying flat on her back on the kitchen floor. The dispatcher instructed him to remove Ellen's hoodie and begin CPR. After he unzipped the hoodie and lifted her head to clear her airway, Sam reported that there was a knife handle sticking out of the upper left side of her chest. The dispatcher told him to stop CPR and wait for the police. EMS arrived at 6:36 p.m. They found Ellen sitting up against the cabinets, but there was a line of coagulated blood running horizontally from her nose to her ear, suggesting that she had been lying on her back when the bleeding took place. Ellen was pronounced dead at 6:42 p.m. And this is where things start to get very weird. Ellen had 20 stab wounds to her chest, abdomen, and neck, including 10 just to the base of her neck. One of those wounds had hit her spinal cord between the second and third vertebrae. She also had a cut on her scalp near the base of her skull, and according to the autopsy, she had stab wounds to her heart, lungs, and liver, as well as a hemorrhage in the membrane surrounding her brain near the cerebellum, close to the base of the skull. The knife that was embedded in her chest was a serrated kitchen knife with a 5-inch blade. It matched the other knives in the kitchen, including the ones in the knife block and the 2 knives sitting in the sink, neither of which had any blood or tissue on them. There was a drainer full of blueberries on the counter next to an orange that appeared to have been freshly sliced in half, which might explain why at least one of these knives was doing out at the time that she died. One detail that may or may not be related: Ellen had partially healed bruises on both her arms and her legs. What's almost as interesting as what was found on Ellen's body is what wasn't found. Ellen showed no signs of injuries to her face or any evidence that she'd bitten her tongue, which the medical examiner thought indicated that she hadn't fought back in self-defense. At least, nothing that had involved her getting hit in the face. There was no skull fracture above the hemorrhage and no damage to her brain. And in the apartment around her, there were several other notable absences. There was no sign of any intruder in the apartment. Ellen's personal and work laptops were still there, as were Sam's. The snow on their 6th floor balcony didn't have a single footprint in it, and it's not hard to understand why nobody would want to be scaling the outside of an apartment building in a blizzard. This case seemed like the definition of a locked room mystery. Philadelphia police took Sam in for questioning, but they released him the same night without charges. On January 27th, the morning after Ellen died, her autopsy was conducted. The medical examiner identified her cause of death as multiple stab wounds and identified her manner of death as homicide. I mean, that makes sense, right? People don't usually stab themselves 20 times, especially not on the back of their own neck. It's a little awkward to reach back there, and I personally am having trouble imagining an accident that could produce these kinds of wounds. But if Ellen was deliberately killed by another person, Who did it? And how did they get out of the apartment before Sam kicked the door down? This story has about 1 million details in it, so let me refresh your memory on a few of them. The swing bar lock on the inside of the door was locked when Sam came back from the gym. Someone had to have locked it behind him, either Ellen or someone else that was inside of the apartment. Sam didn't mention finding anyone else in the apartment when he kicked down the door, although he seems to have been alone when he did it. The Schwartzman brothers claim that they didn't hear any voices on the line other than Sam's during that event. There were no tracks in the snow on the balcony, and nothing in the apartment seemed to have been disturbed. I say seemed because by the time police made it back to the apartment to search it as they would normally do in a homicide case, Sam's family had already had the apartment cleaned. They hired a crime scene cleanup team that actually came recommended by the Philadelphia Police Department, and the property manager at Venice Lofts supervised the cleaning. The property manager recorded video inside of the apartment before the cleaning to document the scene beforehand, but any evidence that couldn't be captured on video, like fingerprints, hair and fiber samples, or DNA, would not be available by the time police came back. Once the cleaning was done, the property manager called James Schwartzman, who retrieved a suit from the apartment along with Ellen's purse, her phone, and at least one laptop. Ellen's funeral took place on January 28th in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and on the 29th, Philadelphia police picked up 3 laptops and an iPhone from Sam's uncle. Ellen's body also underwent a second autopsy, yet nothing new was found, except that her cause of death was confirmed to be a 10-centimeter stab wound to her chest that pierced her lung and aorta. The weapon was confirmed to be a knife from the set in the knife block. And here is where things get messy. A few days later, in February of 2011, the medical examiner's office changed its findings. Ellen Greenberg's death was officially ruled a suicide. And if you're now confused, you're not alone. The medical examiner pointed to 3 details supporting the idea that Ellen had taken her own life. First, her apartment was locked from the inside with no signs of anyone else in the apartment while Sam was out. Second, the injury to her spinal cord wasn't serious enough to prevent her from moving around, so she could potentially have stabbed herself 20 times. And finally, her toxicology report found traces of 3 prescription medications in her system: Zolpidem, clonazepam, and alprazolam. These 3 medications are most commonly prescribed for anxiety and sleep disorders, which suggested to the medical examiner that Ellen was struggling with her mental health. And as it turned out, Ellen was. In the fall of 2010, she'd begun showing signs of severe anxiety and stress, which she attributed to the pressures of her work at the school and the planning of her wedding. By December, she was talking about quitting her job and actually moving back in with her parents. On December 8th, Ellen texted her parents the following: "I want to leave this place. Please get me out." Later, Ellen asked a cousin who lived in the area if she could move in and stay with them for a while. When the cousin asked whether Sam would be coming with her, Ellen didn't answer. On January 10th, someone used Ellen's computer to search for information on euthanasia and painless suicide. Ellen had 3 appointments with a psychiatrist, Dr. Ellen Berman, in the last 2 weeks of her life. It's worth noting here that a psychiatrist is not the same thing as a therapist. Psychiatrists are medical doctors specializing in psychiatry, and in some medical systems, they are most likely to conduct an initial evaluation and handle a patient's prescriptions while leaving therapy to another professional. Seeing a psychiatrist is often the very beginning of seeking mental health treatment. Dr. Berman prescribed medication to control Ellen's anxiety attacks and to help her sleep. On January 12th, during her first meeting with Ellen, Dr. Berman wrote in her notes, "Once things in control. My whole life hard worker. Anxious and not sleeping. Job sucks." On January 17th, Dr. Berman wrote, "She wants to quit, but mom and fiance don't want her to. She can get out of contract with 2 weeks of notice. When she starts to work on something, she starts thinking about everything else. Not suicidal." And during their last meeting on January 19th, "Way better. Feels 75% better. Agrees she should just get through it until June. She tends to walk around compulsively tidying up." On January 22nd, Ellen sent out save the date cards for her wedding on August 13th. That same day, she went dress shopping with a friend who was also getting married soon. While looking for bridesmaids' dresses for the upcoming ceremony, Ellen actually began to cry. She told her friend, "I'm so sorry. I know I'm not myself, but I'll get it together." In the 14 years since Ellen Greenberg died on her kitchen floor, there have been plenty of theories about how her life ended and who was responsible. Did the blizzard obscure the tracks of an intruder on the balcony? Did the bruises on Ellen's arms and legs suggest that she was experiencing domestic violence? Could Sam have somehow closed the swing bar lock from the outside and gone to the gym to establish an alibi? Could Ellen really have stabbed herself 10 times in the back of her neck? But perhaps the most frustrating part of the Ellen Greenberg case is that it's a puzzle with 1,000 pieces, but they don't all seem to form the same image. Every possible explanation comes with at least one glaringly large unanswered question. If an intruder did it, how did they avoid leaving any evidence of their presence other than Ellen's body? If Sam did it, how did he lock the door from the inside when he was on the outside? If Ellen did it, how did she put her body into what should have been a physically impossible position to deliver the blows? Who would want to hurt a first-grade teacher who is about to become a bride? At the time of recording, the death of Ellen Ray Greenberg is still the subject of furious debate, including in the legal system. In 2019, Ellen's parents sued to have her manner of death changed. They commissioned a photogrammetry study that indicated that some of Ellen's wounds could not have been self-inflicted, although the scientific validity of that study is still unclear because the technology is pretty new. In 2022, the case was moved to the jurisdiction of Chester County due to accusations of conflicts of interest. In 2024, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court granted permission to review the evidence and possibly revise Ellen's official cause of death. At the time of recording, no one has been charged in the death of Ellen Ray Greenberg. Maybe more evidence will come to light, but maybe it won't. For now, the question of who was responsible for her death seems like it will remain unanswered. Just one more mystery buried under the snow.
Well, we have new developments in the Ellen Greenberg case. Today, a judge in a civil suit ruled that there is enough evidence to go to trial. Now, Greenberg's family sued several Philadelphia city officials, claiming that the investigation into the 27-year-old's death caused them emotional distress. The Manioc teacher was found dead in 2011.
So without any exaggerating, The night after I finished the recording that you just saw, a bombshell of an update happened with this now 13-year-old case. On February 1st, the medical examiner who performed Ellen's autopsy, Dr. Marlon Osborne, made a filing with the court in which he said, "It is my professional opinion Ellen's manner of death should be designated as something other than suicide. I am now aware that information exists which draws into question whether Ellen's fiancé was witnessed entering the apartment before placing the 911 call on January 26, 2011. Whether the door was forced open as reported, whether Ellen's body was moved by someone else inside of the apartment with her at or near the time of her death, and the findings of Lindsay Emery from her neuropathological evaluation of Ellen's cervical segment sample." In plain English, that means that Dr. Osborne changed his official opinion. He's now saying in a court filing that he's not sure whether Sam was seen going into the apartment before he called 911, and that he's not sure whether the door was actually kicked open the way Sam said it was. Also, that he's not sure whether Ellen's body was moved around the time that she died, and that the stab wound to her spinal cord may have actually paralyzed her after all. Obviously, if Ellen wasn't able to move her arms after that blow, she couldn't have been the one to plunge the knife into her chest where it was found. Dr. Emery's opinion has varied a little more. In a deposition in 2021, she said that one of the wounds in Ellen's neck showed no vital response. It didn't bleed the way living tissue usually did, which suggested that Ellen was already dead when that stab wound happened. Later, Emery filed a declaration saying that there were other possible explanations for that wound looking the way that it did. Unlike Dr. Emery, Dr. Osborne has stuck to his opinion, at least in public, for the last 13 years. Despite multiple lawsuits and an online petition with more than 150,000 signatures, changing that opinion is a massive development. However, Dr. Osborne has no power to change Ellen's death certificate anymore, as he moved to Florida years ago and he no longer has a Pennsylvania medical license, or a job working with the city of Philadelphia for that matter. On Monday, February 3rd, the city of Philadelphia and the Greenbergs settled both the lawsuits. The city has announced that it will pay the Greenbergs some amount of money, but that exact figure hasn't been released. On February 6th, Dr. Wayne Ross, a forensic neuropathologist hired by the Greenbergs, gave an interview to News Nation claiming that Ellen's death was staged to look like a suicide, and that her body showed signs of strangulation. He also claimed that the crime scene photos showed Ellen's makeup bag and other belongings in the process of being packed up, as if she had been preparing to leave. Also, on February 6th, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro began making the rounds on television. Shapiro had been the Attorney General for Pennsylvania from 2017 to 2023, and had been responsible for transferring the case to Chester County. After the new information emerged in early February, the Greenbergs and a private detective that they hired began publicly criticizing Shapiro for not helping them earlier. The only thing that seems certain at the time of this recording is that the investigation into the death of Ellen Rae Greenberg has been reopened, and that this story isn't over yet.